In Mishnah Dalet, fourth Mishnah. Yosef ben Yoezer ish Tzreido. Yosef Yoezer, he was known as the man of Tzreido. He had come from a location called Tzreido. Yosef ben Yochanan. And Yosef, the son of Yochanan, ish Yerushalayim. He was the man of Yerushalayim. He had identified with Jerusalem. Kiblu mehem. Yosef ben Yoezer ish Tzri Omer. The first one mentioned, what does he say? Your home should be a location for chachomim, Torah scholars. It should be their location of gathering, the location of assembly. Meaning, you should avail your home for Torah scholars to gather there, to engage in their dialogue, in the Torah discussions, to study there. That's Beisvad L'Chachomim. Now, it's interesting. The Gemara tells us that in Brachos, it's the first tractate, that after the temple was destroyed, that the only thing God has in this world are the 4 cubits at which halacha is discussed. I mean, definitive law. We're talking about Torah law. What is the objective of creation? The objective of creation was 2 things. This is the setting for the observance of the Torah, and also for the Jewish people, who are the only people who have relevance to the Torah itself. We read in Pirkei Avos, Ein Amoritz Chosid. A person who's an Amoritz, ignorant, it cannot be a Chosid, cannot be scrupulously pious, but he's not even knowledgeable. A Jew could only know how to behave and how to function. As a Jew, you must study. Without knowledge, although you may mean well, but you must study. And even when you study, what is the studying? It's luminam naslasos. You study to actualize the Torah itself. It's not studying just abstract intellectualism, but it's through the study, the intent is to come upon the definitive understanding of how you have to live as a Jew. What is kosher? What is Shabbos? What is the festival? What is anything? Whatever's contained in the Torah, you can only have an understanding of that only if you have a definitive understanding of what that is. So when you study, it's not just studying intellectualism, it has to be definitive. That's called Lilmod Avdas Lasos. I'm studying to actualize the Torah. What's actualization? After you study, I ask you, so how do you conduct yourself in this particular situation, in this particular setting, and you don't know? You may have studied, but if the whole concept is to study to come to a conclusion, a definitive conclusion, how to live and how to behave, how to process life, you're not there. Now, therefore, God values, after the destruction of the temple, what is the value of existence? We have definitive people living, studying, and they study that they present the definitive understanding of what God wants from them, how to live within the context of His Torah. Now, how do you come? What's the process to come to definitive understanding? It's only through dialogue. Therefore, the Talmud tells us that if a person says the Amidah, the ultimate location to say the Amidah is the location which you study. Why? If God values that location, and we know that a beis medrash, a study hall, is a semblance of the temple. It's called Migdash Ma'at. It's a semblance of the holiness of the Beis Hamikdash. And the Gemara tells us there's a discussion which is holier, the location which you pray or the location which you study. What's the discussion? The law is that whenever we deal with anything of sanctity, you're only permitted to exchange for something on the same level or upgrade, but a downgrade is not permitted. I'll give you an example. A pair of tefillin are innately holy, and a mezuzah that you put on your doorpost is innately holy. Which object has a greater degree of holiness? So the Talmud tells us tefillin are holier than a mezuzah. So let's say you have an extra pair of tefillin, and you want to sell the tefillin and use the proceeds to buy a mezuzah. You're not permitted. Why? Because since the innate value of tefillin in terms of their innateness are holier than mezuzah, the proceeds of tefillin you're not permitted to downgrade. That's called downgrading the kedusha. You're going from a more high, greater, elevated kedusha to a lesser kedusha. But if you want to buy another pair of tefillin, or you want to buy a Torah scroll, a Sefer Torah, which is the ultimate, you're permitted. That's upgrading. So now there's a question. You sell a beis medrash. You spell a location where people study Torah, and you want to purchase a synagogue. So if a synagogue has greater sanctity than a study hall where you study Torah, then you're permitted to take the proceeds of the study hall and purchase a Beis HaKnesses, a synagogue. But if the synagogue does not have that level of sanctity as a beis medrash, because Torah is the ultimate, it's not only a location you pray, so then you're not permitted to use the proceeds of beis medrash to purchase a synagogue. The way we rule, the ultimate location, it has kedusha, it has this innate sanctity, is the location you study Torah. So therefore, the conclusion is that if you sell a beis medrash, a study hall where you study Torah, you're not permitted to buy a synagogue. But if you sell a synagogue, you're permitted to use the proceeds to buy a beis medrash, because that's called upgrading, not downgrading. So there's innate, because of what's done in that location, how you utilize that location. Is it for prayer or for Torah study? That will determine its innate level of sanctity. We rule the sanctity of beis medrash is greater. So now you open your home and you say, my home is available for Torah scholars to enter the Torah dialogue, to study. Once you have that, you allowing your home to be utilized for the ultimate. What's the ultimate? The ultimate is the study of Torah. You're inviting the Shekhinah, the divine presence is there. Of course, that dialogue has relevance to come to a definitive understanding of how a Jew has to behave, Jewishly wise, within Judaism. Therefore, he says, your house, your home should be a meeting location for Chachomim, for the Torah scholars. You can designate one room. The Talmud tells us in Brachos that if a person hosts a Talmud Chochem and you feed him food, it's like bringing a sacrifice, bringing bikurim to the temple. And when you give him wine to drink, it's like pouring libations on the on the mizbeach, on the altar. Because what does this person represent? We're not talking about what we call a Torah scholar. Not a Torah scholar. We're talking about a person who's a Torah sage. The Talmud tells us what was the repository for the Torah, for the tablets and the broken tablets in the temple or in the Mishkan. It was the Aron, the Ark. And the Torah goes out of its way to tell us how was the Ark built, how was the Aron built. It was gold on the inside, on the outside. As there was a gold casing on the outside. There was an inlay of gold on the inside. And this was the repository of the Torah itself. The Torah scroll, the broken tablets, and the second set of tablets. So what is the Torah telling us? That kol tamid chacham she'tocha kibaro, that if a Torah scholar, his inside is not reflective of his outside, he has to be totally consistent. He's not a Torah scholar. Whatever way you look on the outside, that has to be your essence. And it's not your essence, you're not a Torah scholar. But you have all this knowledge. I mean, the person has to be fully consistent. It's not you talk the talk. You got to walk the walk the way you talk the talk. You have to be totally consistent, genuine. You have to be genuinely that Torah scholar. So we speak about inviting, turning your home into a location. It should be a meeting place for chachamim. The chacham we're talking about, not intellectuals. You know, it's not for intellectual dialogue. Chacham means people are truly Talmidei Chachamim. They represent what God wants they should represent. They're engaging in the process to come upon the truth of Torah, actualizing, coming upon what's definitive. What does God want from us? That's firstly. So what do you identify with? Now, many years ago, there was an expression, I think the time Roosevelt was president. This is even before Larry's time. He used to have these fireside chats. And he would say, your home is your castle. One's home is his castle. Every American at one time, the objective was he has a family, he has his home. What's outside your home, you may be a laborer, but your home is your castle. Your family is the essence, and you purchase a home, that is your castle. So a person, what gives a person a sense of security? Roof over his head, four walls to provide whatever protection you need for your existence. You take that which is so essential in your security and you turn it into an assembly location for people who study Torah. So you're taking something which is primary in your life, which you identify with, and say, this is my location. What is your clothes? How do you identify? I invite Torah sages to my home. This is their home. It's like it's my home, it's there, they're always welcome. It's Beisvad, it's assembly location for them. Who do you identify with? That's an identification. Besides the essence of what it is. You should roll in the dust of their feet. What does dust always represent? Now we read in the Torah, when Avram Avinu, on the third day of circumcision, which was a very serious day of recovery, God wanted him to convalesce. And Avram, who was continuously involved, literally without a stop in hospitality, hosting people, Hashem wanted him a respite. So he took the sun out of its sheath, and it was the hottest day in existence. There were no wayfarers coming down the road. And because Hashem had seen that he was pained, that there was no wayfarers, he sent 3 angels in human form. And when he saw them, he runs to them and he prostrates himself before them. We're talking about 3 wayfarers. Bowing doesn't mean bowing at the waist. When the Torah speaks about hishtachavo, bowing means prostration. What is prostration? Fully, you're flat on the ground. That's prostration. Your arms are extended, your feet are extended, and you're lying on your face and belly is on the ground. What does that connote? Prostration connotes that I am like dust at your feet. It's a total negation. It's an expression of humility that in your presence, I don't exist. I have no value. Avram Avinu wanted to give these wayfarers an understanding that his interest in them is not himself. His value is only them. That's the concept of frustration. I acknowledge you, value, I esteem you, I revere you. That all that exists is you. My focus, my purpose, my value is you. That's frustration. So we speak about when the rabbis, the sages come to your house, how do you treat them? When you listen to their teachings, you listen to their positions. You should roll in the dust of their feet, what they step on. The dust of their feet. What does that say? You know, a person many years ago, the story goes back, and it was on Tisha B'Av night. So they had just opened the tunnel tours by the Kosel, by the wall. They had done all the excavations. And it was Tisha B'Av night. It was about 1 a.m, and nobody was yet given the tour. And I was there with a few people, and one of the people was Rabbi Pinto. And we were given the tunnel tour by the one who did the excavations. So one of the people that were there with us, he was the brother-in-law of a very, very wealthy man. He lived in Philadelphia. And he says to me, and he was a conservative Orthodox Jew, and he says to me, you know, I'd like to ask you a question, Rabbi, something about Judaism. I said, okay. I said, we don't have much time. We're about to go into the tunnels. So I don't know how much time I have to answer your question. But he says, fine, let me ask you a question either way. You know, I've been studying Judaism for a long time, and I have many questions about it, and I don't fully get it. And you realize I have an MBA from Wharton, so I'm a pretty smart guy. And since I'm such a smart guy, seemingly I should get it. So if I don't get it, that means there's something missing there. And not only that, I have 2 teenage sons. They have early admission to Yale into the mathematics department because I have very bright children. So I don't come from, our family's not an ordinary family. You know? And he keeps getting back to me. And you realize I have an MBA from Wharton, and I have this business, and I have this. And evidently, if I don't get it, could you tell me exactly what my difficulty is? Me with my intellectual capacity, I should get it. So if I don't get it, does that mean there's something lacking there or something else? So I said to him, you know, we're about to go into to have the tour, but I can answer your question with a question. And then we can follow up with the answer. I said, I want to ask you a question. Maimonides. He was known as one of the greatest physicians who ever lived. He was a doctor. He was a philosopher. He was a Torah sage. He was an intellectual. He was an astronomer. He was everything. And you want to know something? But what was his claim to fame? He was an observant, dedicated Jew, and his first and foremost was his belief in God and the Torah. And he was a pretty smart guy, and he had no problem with Judaism, with the Torah. So I'm not sure why you, who are so smart, and you went to have the MBA from Wharton, and your kids have early admission into Yale, well, you have the problem, but evidently your problem was not Maimonides' problem. So we're going to try to understand why you have the problem, Maimonides didn't have the problem. I said, to be discussed, and that's when we went into the tunnels. That was my response to him. So when you hear the rabbis, you're agreeable, you have great respect for them. You revere them. You open your home to them. My home is their home. It's an assembly location they can discuss, enter in dialogue. And you listen to their conversations, and you listen to their positions. And you're a pretty smart guy. You can even afford this beautiful location to invite them in. And you earn, as they said, big bucks, mega bucks. So you're also a smart guy. And sometimes you hear with their positions and they don't fully resonate with you. So, you know, So what's the problem? You should roll in the dust of their feet. What they know, what they understand, you don't begin understanding. You have to negate yourself. You need humility. You have to roll in the dust of their feet. When you start seeing yourself, them, everything, and you the dust of their feet, maybe then you'll begin understanding what you don't understand. Then you'll have a capacity at least to accept and understand their position, why their position is different than your position. So it's not enough just to open your house and you pride yourself, I have the rabbis coming to my house. But the value is their positions and what they're studying. To understand what they are, what their position is primary, you're secondary. You're there only to facilitate the location for them to be able to enter into this dialogue, to come to certain definitive positions, which is what God wants. And they come upon truth. You know, there's a question which is asked by Rebbe Chana Wassim in Zech Tzarek Levrocha. He writes that Rambam, Maimonides, esteemed Aristotle. He's known as Aristo, as one of the greatest minds in the history of the world. That Aristotle was so brilliant that he was able to come upon concepts that only a prophet was able to come upon because God communicated to him. That's how brilliant Aristotle was. And yet, Aristotle did not believe in God. His question is, how's that possible? A man as brilliant as that doesn't believe in God, and a 12-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy has an obligation to believe in God. Seems to be, if this genius of geniuses, one of a kind of mind, who has a capacity to understand depth, breadth, and everything, he doesn't believe in God. How does God put such a heavy burden on such a young child to believe in God? Or many people of ordinary intelligence to believe in God, if the genius of geniuses doesn't believe? That's Rebbe Chanan Wasserman, Zecher Tzarek Levrocha, that's his question. What is the basis why we believe in God? That there's no other power in existence other than God, and God wills every aspect of existence, including Aristotle. And Aristotle had choice, had free choice like any other human being has choice. And he saw it the way he saw it, based on his conflicts of interest, based on his ego, based on his depth and breadth of understanding. But let's say God would say, nothing exists outside myself. And God tells us directly ourselves, to us, nothing exists outside of myself, and everything is a manifestation of me willing existence. And we heard it directly from him. Of course, we're at Sinai, and every Jew was at Sinai. The millions of Jews were there, and God openly communicated this to them. Okay, Aristotle now comes with a whirlwind, a genius which is beyond anybody's comprehension or capacity, and he says, "I understand, but it's not true." How could it be not true? We met God. God met us head on, communicating directly to our souls. So it has nothing to do with our intellectualism. It's not we were hyperventilating. That's what we thought God was talking to us. So we accept it as fact. Now you want to come with every level of refutation to prove with your unlimited genius that what we experienced and saw is not true. How could it not be true? How could it be not true? You have questions, you have convincing arguments, but it's all irrelevant. I'm not smart enough to refute your arguments. But if I be God, I would explain to you why you're wrong. Because God has a greater intellect than you have. But based on your genius, unlimited genius, I can't stand up against you. But it doesn't change my position. Because I have it straight directly from the source, from God himself. That is the answer. But the question now is, but what about it? What about Aristotle? If he was endowed with such genius, why doesn't he see what we see? That's the question. So it doesn't in any way weaken our position. Our position is etched in stone, fact, irrefutable fact, because we have it directly from the source at Sinai. Because God openly communicated to every Jew, and that's what we talk about the tradition. It's passed down generation after generation till the present moment. You went to MIT and you MIT 90,000 times over. It's irrelevant with Aristotle, with Einstein, and everybody else along with him. So the question is, but if it is that, so why don't they, with that genius, why do they come upon this truth? So Recharon Wasserman answers, explains, everybody has conflicts of interest. We have desires, we have ambitions, but we all also have conscience. You know, you can't do something in your life if it causes you to live with a level of conscience that it's not possible to live with. That's the level of guilt. So you know what you do? Your conflict of interest takes truth and deludes it. You go into self-delusion and convince yourself that that fact is not correct. You may have knew that's your position. I don't agree with it. Why? And I'll give you the most ingenious reason, which within your capacity, it's irrefutable. You understand? But we don't have to refute your position because we have it straight from the source. We have the fact, and the fact is a refutable fact. But you can't refute my theory and my hypotheses and my whatever you want to call it. I don't have to refute it. Many years ago, I had a discussion with Larry's friend, Michael Starnart. And I sparred with him for many weeks and months and years. And then when he reached a point where he couldn't get me even to consider any of his positions, he says, let me ask you, Rabbi, if I would come up and convince you that my position is right, she says, you're an honest man. Would you accept my position? So I said, no. He says, why? I said, I'll explain it to you. Whatever I understand and the way I'm coming back at you to prove my position, that is not the basis for my belief. That only strengthens my belief. That secures my belief. The basis for my belief, I said, I don't need any empirical evidence. As you always say, your word is empirical. I don't need it. But I have proof, which I've shown you endless times over, that what I believe is true and correct, and you can't shake it. So what about if I come up and you won't be able to respond to my question? It doesn't change my reality, because my reality is rooted in my tradition. I get it straight from the source. See, I have a question, but the question doesn't in any way undermine what I believe, because my belief is rooted in fact, irrefutable fact. It's not based on my intellectualism. It was based on what I came upon through my deductions, my intellectualism, my analysis. You're right. So now you've disproven my analysis. My analysis is faulty. So if that's the case, I should accept your position. But my position is not based on analysis or any level of investigation. It's based on fact. What I say and what I believe at our discussions, that's only reinforces the fact that the fact is irrefutable. It's the same thing with Aristotle. I can't refute his position. Why there is no God? I don't have to. Because the basis of my belief is not based on my understanding or my analysis. Then he would be right. Because I can't refute, I can't find any fallacy in his analysis. But that's not where we're coming from. We're coming from Moshe Kibbutz Torah Sinai. That's where it began. And Sinai is God himself. Therefore, our belief, our whatever we have is ironclad. It cannot be shaken.